English translation 357th contact. Monday 26th of April 2004. Year 0, 23 hours.
Hello, this is a surprise. First of all, I was not expecting any of you, and certainly not that you would come here, my friend. And you are lucky too, because Eva has just gone over to Selena's place and will probably stay there. However, be greeted and gladly welcomed.
It is a pleasure to see you. I also offer you my greetings. I felt the need to visit you. I also come here because apparently there was a problem with your computer, as Florina told me.
That is right.
The cuckoo knows why, but since I got this thing, it has crashed several times, erasing written data.
It also happened several times that something completely different was written than what I typed in, which sometimes made the sentences express something completely different than they should. This has happened several times because suddenly wrong words were inserted, or words that had already been written were simply missing in the printout, but were present in the computer.
Florina told me about it, whereupon I contacted Zafanat Paneash. He will come to you in the near future and check out your computer, as you like to say.
You mean, he can rig this thing so that if my computer crashes again, I will not lose any more data?
That is of correctness. The same thing as with the Mayan report will not happen again. You already retrieved it again, I suppose, because Florina took the data with her to send it to you again.
Yes, everything is fine.
Not quite yet, my friend. Here, look. There are still some mistakes in this report section that need to be corrected.
Then I will do it in the computer. If you will wait 2 minutes, what report you have got here. Ah, yes. Wait a minute. I have got it right here. Please point out the errors.
Here you can see the errors, here and here.
Okay, I will just make the corrections. There, that is done. Did you find any other flaws?
No, that is all.
Thank you for your monitoring efforts. But may I ask you now, if you have already found out anything about the thing I asked you about some time ago? It just does not leave me alone, which is why I asked Christian Freener to email me where I am looking for the connection.
You talk about it very carefully, dear friend. I guess you do not want to talk about it openly and do not want to mention any names, at least not yet. I will keep to that. Well, it is a fact that through mistakes and misinformation of some people you know very well, differences, slander, and almost disputes have arisen, and the slander has even penetrated to the core group members. Unfortunately, we also were prepared to give a hand to the slanders in such a wise that we assumed that it was true. This was again based on the fact that we were of the good opinion that the persons in question, as I will call the erroneous sides, had a clear and profound insight into all the relevant aspects of the matters involved. Unfortunately, however, we were misled by the statements of the persons in question, as was still very often the case with us at that time, as you know. Later on, when we were disabused by you and no longer got involved in certain machinations of the destructive forces, we decided to let everything rest from then on and not to try to find out more, because we were too often deceived by the wrong words and thoughts of the fallible ones, who spoke and thought differently from the truth. For this reason, because we could not understand the lying, because it was foreign to us, we unfortunately took all the wrong words and thoughts as truth and reality, until you taught us better. But it took years until then, and it is only since 1999 that we have had the laboriously acquired ability to critically and healthily oppose the words and thoughts of the Earth humans, so that we no longer simply consider everything that is thought and spoken as given truth, but that we have been able to learn and develop abilities in this wise. The credit for this lies solely with you, my friend. and only through this acquired ability was it also possible for me to be able to make a real effort for your request, which you asked me to clarify some time ago. So I found out that you had been misinformed by the aforementioned persons in various things in connection with your request, which resulted in apparent inconsistencies that led to differences between you and the other side. Of course, I know that you did not want this, and that you have always looked for a way to settle these differences, which you have now done through Christian, after I could give you the necessary information about who caused the disagreement. Of course, the persons in question will vehemently deny this, because they are too self-absorbed and imperious to be able to understand. All this, however, I have only found out through my recent investigations, in which I was guided by your advised guidelines, whereby I gained frightening insights into the fact that we were so much deceived by the persons in question and took their thoughts and words as truth, although they were false, autocratic, imperious, and arrogant. Never again will we be deceived by such things. For your part, your trust was shamefully abused to drive a wedge between you and the other side, because the selfishness, arrogance, and self-opinionatedness of the fallible persons did not allow them not to be in the first place in relation to you and not to play the leading role. You have often talked about this with me and also with Ptah, and always regretted very much, and did not understand that these differences arose, and this despite the false information and the wrong advice that was given to you. And all of us, like you, have a very great need to settle the differences that have arisen through lies and deceit, and to ask for settlement and forbearance. Like you, we do not want to leave anything wrong, but to clarify everything and express our gratitude for the settlement and forbearance. It is very regrettable that everything turned out like this, and that we too were involved in it, and also wrongly instructed you to act according to the wrong words of the people advising you. If we had paid more attention to your words and thoughts at that time, we would have sought your advice even then and carried out the analyses in the manner you advised us. Unfortunately, we did not do that, which is why we see ourselves both in your debt and in the debt of the other party, with whom you have been trying to get in contact via Christian for some time. May your efforts be crowned with success, because they would not only be pleasing for you and for the core group members as well as for the other side and a help in settling a tiresome matter, but also for us.
So nothing new has come up. But you know, Quetzal, the blame is also on me, because I should have been more critical about my trust, and I should have monitored everything before I gave my approval to everything without hesitation. I have learned a lesson from this, and have been monitoring everything very carefully for a long time before I gave my consent.
No, nothing new has arisen, but what I could fathom should actually be enough. It is comprehensive and groundbreaking for everything that has happened in the matter. But the fault is also with us, because we too have let our trust be abused too much, apart from the fact that we did not listen to you, and did not want to admit that the words and thoughts of Earth humans do not have to agree with the truth, and therefore can be wrong and correspond to lies.
You are probably also right that it should be enough. Therefore, nothing more should be done than to try to make things right. I also think that at least the names of the other side with whom the unpleasant differences exist should be openly mentioned in our conversation reports in order to rehabilitate them when the conflict is resolved.
That is so probably correct and also my opinion. Ta is of the same opinion, because I have initiated him into the matter today.
Fine. Then everything is clear between all of us in this respect. Then, when the time really comes, I only have to inform the core group members, although I do not want to name the guilty persons by name, just to keep the peace. For my part, I have good hope that everything will be sorted out, because I respect the other side as good friends and as reasonable and understanding people who do not hold grudges.
I think you will be right. At least that is how Ptah and I see it. It is just very unfortunate that such unpleasantness could arise. In fact, we did not expect such in this form because we were, as you say, too naive about the honesty of certain people who gathered around you. Had we listened to you earlier, much evil and calamity could have been avoided, and moreover, we would have come to better and more comprehensive knowledge of these matters earlier.
This is how it shall be done. Look at this fantastic story. Ptah, you and I have talked about this before, and you explained that it is nothing more than a fantastic story without truth. Please read it.
Quetzal reads the uncorrected rendition of the emails received.
In fact, Light's version of events on the 20th of February, 1954 is confirmed by various independent sources.
1954 summer. In his research, British UFO researcher Desmond Leslie came across an Air Force member who confirmed that President Eisenhower was in Muroc during his vacation in Palm Springs to inspect alien flying objects that had landed. A saucer, a 35-meter-wide flying object that had landed on a Muroc runway, was hidden in Hangar 27, heavily guarded. Men returning from leave were suddenly not allowed to enter the base, but were ordered to disappear. Some of them had their personal belongings brought to the gate without being allowed to enter the base. People who happened to be temporarily on Muroc at the time were not allowed to leave the base under any circumstances. In 1954, the writer Frank Scully, who had bought a log cabin above Edwards that year, learned from one of the carpenters who worked for him, who was a civilian employee of Edwards, that the president had indeed visited Edwards' AFB a few months ago, and he had wondered that there was nothing about it in the newspapers the next day. 1982, end of the year. A member of the British House of Lords, the Earl of Clancarty, publishes the confidential report of a retired former top U.S. test pilot. The pilot says Clancarty was one of 6 people to attend Eisenhower's meeting with aliens. He was called in as a technical advisor because of his character and ability as a test pilot. In his report, it says 5 different alien spaceships landed on the base. 3 were saucer-shaped, 2 cigar-shaped. Eisenhower, who was in nearby Palm Springs for recreation at that exact time, was apparently summoned by military officials. While Eisenhower and his small group watched, the extraterrestrials got out and approached them. The aliens looked similar to humans. They were about the same size, built like the average human, could breathe air without a helmet. The aliens spoke English and told Eisenhower they wanted to start an educational program for the humans of Earth to inform them about their presence. Eisenhower told them he did not think the world was prepared for this and was worried that an announcement would cause a panic. The strangers seemed to understand and then declared that they would continue to make isolated contact with individuals until the Earth humans were accustomed to them. Eisenhower explained that he thought that was right as long as they did not create panic and confusion. Then the strangers demonstrated their awe-inspiring technical capabilities to the petrified president and his escort. They showed the president their spaceship and even demonstrated their ability to make themselves invisible. This caused the president a lot of discomfort because none of us could see them, even though we knew they were there. Then the aliens got into their ships and took off. All of us were sworn to absolute secrecy. Lord Clancarty, the pilot, never spoke of this to anyone, but now everyone who was there is dead, except himself. French writer Robert Charroux quotes the report of a young lieutenant who claims to have witnessed President Eisenhower's contact with the aliens. At the relentless urging of a reporter, He is said to have said, "The two men who climbed out of the UFO spoke English and declared that they had come from a planet adjacent to the giant star Betelgeuse. The living conditions on this planet were similar to those on the Earth." In the mid-1950s, a sergeant described the landing of the ships at the end of January 1954 to the Los Angeles UFO expert Gabriel Green. "I was at a gun drill under the command of a general. We were firing live ammunition when suddenly 5 UFOs flew directly above us. The general ordered all batteries to open fire on the ships immediately. We did, but our missiles had no effect. We then stopped firing and watched the UFOs land next to one of the large halls." 1978, 10th April. The U.S. astronaut Gordon Cooper confirms on the Merv Griffin Show, America's most popular talk show, the story that a spaceship landed in America. "There were occupants. Our government saw the metal and knows what these creatures look like." Cooper himself later confirmed in an interview with U.S. author Timothy Green Beckley that he had been shown a film while on duty, which showed a UFO landing on a California airbase in the early 1950s. 1976, 1st March. Ex-Air Force member Paul Solomon reveals further details about his contact with Eisenhower. One day an incident occurred that caused all officers, including the commander, to hurry to the observation tower. From there, the commander observed a disk 60 to 100 meters in diameter hovering directly above the runway. The strange object was observed for hours, literally until every single man on the base knew about it. All leave passes were canceled. Everyone had to stay in their quarters. No one was informed of what was going on. Everybody was, of course, scared to death, because everybody knew that that thing out there had been flying around the runway for hours. From side to side, up and down, all kinds of flight maneuvers that simply could not be associated with conventional flying objects. That thing out there just defied all the laws of physics. Finally, we were all called together and ordered to return to our workstations to prepare everything for President Eisenhower, who had arrived at the base in the meantime. Then it became really mysterious because the rumor spread that the inmates of the thing had asked for Eisenhower and that he would even go on board. Of course, we all received precise instructions. In a large room, we were made clear what we were to say and what we were not to say. What we were not allowed to say then, I will tell you now. Of course, we never knew whether what we were officially told had actually happened. What we knew with certainty was merely the fact that Eisenhower had not been expected before. Then the UFO thing happened, and suddenly Eisenhower was there. After the president left the base, there were constantly new instructions. Undoubtedly, they were still undecided as to what to announce and what not to announce. From an officer who was there when Eisenhower boarded the UFO, Solomon learned about the content of the president's discussions with the aliens. The most important thing was that we had to know and learn to consider ourselves citizens of a planetary family, and that we had the obligation and should begin to behave as part of a family. We had to give up the idea that we could do whatever we wanted to do. Only when we start behaving as citizens of a planetary system can we relate to them. They are part of the same family and should be treated as such, and that is how we should see the people of our Earth. Once we have learned to live peacefully with other nations, we can establish interplanetary relations. Retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel Wendell C. Stevens interviewed the niece of a U.S. admiral who was contacted by aliens in the early 1950s. The niece told him that one day she was personally invited by Eisenhower and told him about her contacts with aliens. Whatever she said, Eisenhower confirmed that they told him that when he met them. The admiral's niece asked, "But if you already know all this, why do not you go public with it?" My dear, Eisenhower replied, a president does not govern alone. My advisors feel that such an announcement would throw our country into chaos. 1989, 23rd May. Those authorities mentioned by Light were powerful enough to keep the encounter on Muroc a secret and to reject the aliens' offer of help. How this happened is explained by ex-Secret Service agent Milton William Cooper in his paper, The Secret Government, a race of human-looking aliens the U.S. government note Billy. This group of aliens offered us help in our spiritual development. They demanded, this was their main condition, that we should dismantle and destroy our nuclear weapons. They were not willing to provide us with their technology, because spiritually, we would not even be able to deal responsibly with the technology we possess. They believed that we would use any new technology only to destroy each other. This race explained that we are on a path of self-destruction, and we must stop killing each other, polluting the earth, exploiting the earth's natural resources, and learn to live in harmony with the creation.
Where did you get this? The whole thing is confused and is written in a very imprecise language, which alone testifies that the author of the writing is not very educated.
Hans-Georg Lanzendorfer, through the internet or some such, toyed with the question whether the entire thing is based upon the truth.
That is actually not the case, because everything corresponds to an untruth, because a contact between USA President Dwight David Eisenhower and any kind of being of extraterrestrial origin never took place. These stupid fantasy stories have already circulated for a considerable time in circles which see extraterrestrial flying devices and beings as being behind everything and everyone, and which moreover are very gullible and criminally uncritical. Such stories, which are invented from beginning to end and make reality ridiculous, unfortunately circulate very much in the so-called UFO circles, in which all nonsense is taken as ready cash, if I may speak with your words. An unbelievable number of deceivers, swindlers as well as liars, assert that they are in telepathic, personal, or perceptible, or some other kind of contact with extraterrestrial intelligences, whereby, however, as a rule, everything is only pure invention, corresponding to profit-making, a delusion or affective schizophrenia. Quite especially in regard to us Pleiaren, respectively Pleiadians, as we called ourselves in the terrestrial German language at the beginning of our contacts. Very many lies, swindles, deceptions, and frauds are put into operation on the Earth, and indeed through male as well as female Earth humans. Actually, however, with the exception of yourself, from all our peoples of our great Federation, which encompasses a measure of distance of 48 million light-years, no personal, telepathic, perceptional, or other contact at all with Earth humans exists in the form that they could be perceived, whether consciously, subconsciously, or unconsciously. In our entire Federation, impulse contacts only exist coming from we Pleiaren, in the form of help with the evolution of Earth humans, who, however, have not the slightest notion of them, and they exclusively pertain to persons who are active in developmental research. Firstly, all those who assert that they would be in any kind of connection, respectively, would maintain contact. With us, or with any kind of being, do not belong to that, and secondly, they would also be incapable of maintaining any kind of contact with us, because all prerequisites for that are lacking in them. And thirdly is to say, that all who claim to be in any kind of form of contact or other connection with us are either pathologically delusional, pathologically imaginative, or schizophrenic, if they have not quite knowingly fallen to lying, fraud, deception, and swindling. We have already often explained that to you, thus also, that you are the only one who possesses the necessary prerequisites to maintain various forms of contact with us. Among all humans on the earth, you are the only one who, for quite certain reasons, is capable of that. They are capabilities which all other Earth humans lack, and will still not have been able to achieve in even 1,000 years. Yet you know that indeed better than I.
You talk too much, Quetzal, my friend. Let us from there talk once again about the American moon landings, even if we have already often done that. I have here a book with the title Die Dunkelseite von Apollo, The Dark Side of Apollo, by Gernot L. Geis, which was published by Michaels Verlag in the year 2002. It has the ISB number 3-28953960729. The research which the author undertook is astonishing, and likewise expresses that the U.S. Americans, respectively NASA, undertook the greatest swindle of all time, and has deceived the entire world in order to win the Cold War and the race to the moon, and so forth, against the Soviet Union. In addition to that, I'm able to recall that earlier, once the talk was that NASA, subsequently, under certain circumstances, after the alleged first conjured-up moon race landing on the 20th of July 1969, carried out manned or unmanned moon landings, whereby all objects and so forth were then set out on the moon, which were supposed to have been left behind by the alleged first landing on the moon. The reason for that was supposed to have been, as I remember it, that it could later be proven that the first moon landing, and also further ones, was actually supposed to have come about on the 20th of July 1969. You have further explained that the moon landing lie will also be vehemently contested in the new millennium, and everything will be undertaken to create proof, and indeed again in the form that new fraudulent pictures are to be manufactured, in which allegedly, the first moon landings left behind objects and so forth, will be able to be sighted on the moon through a new telescope and will be broadcast worldwide through television as a new fraud. The whole thing can eventually actually come about through a new type of telescope, always with the prerequisite that real materials were set out on the moon. Yet it could also be that then everything is only a studio setup, as with the alleged first moon landing. For this, indeed in suitable areas, hundreds of craters were created by means of underground explosions of blasting agents, and, with construction equipment, heaved-up hills were created, which finally looked like a moon landscape. These areas, alongside special film studios, were then indeed also used for the lavish so-called training of astronauts. The decisive machinations for the entire moon landing swindle lead back fundamentally to Werner Freiherr von Braun and Walt Disney, who, together as good friends, already established everything earlier. Walt Disney, as movie special effects specialist, suited NASA perfectly. But, unfortunately, he died 2.5 years before the execution of the swindle, on the 12th of December 1966, if I remember correctly. His ideas and those of Werner von Braun, who indeed died in 1977, I think that it was on 16th of June, were then, however, still realized. Besides, there was still Werner von Braun's co-worker, with whom I was permitted to have a short conversation in Sim Yasei's beamship, as she flew with me to America, and she beamed the man into her ship. Naturally, he was completely perplexed and could initially not understand what had happened to him, and he was suddenly in our ship. His name was Ernst Stuhlinger. Note from Billy of the 24th of September 2005. E. Stuhlinger was Werner von Braun's right-hand man, and he said, among other things, "It was the lie of the millennium, a fraud of the millennium without equal, NASA's and the USA's best specialized deceit spectacle ever, and he came from Germany like Werner von Braun." First, he wanted to dispute the moon swindle, but Sim Yasei's irrefutable presence with her ship and her explanation led to him confessing to the incredible swindle. But he then therefore begged that we should not publish his name and the conversation we had with him for the time being. Rather first then, when he is dead. Today the man would have to be over 90 years old. If he is dead, I do not know. If he still lives, then I want to openly speak of the short conversation I had with him, and his name. Is it then possible that I can keep the notes that I have received from you?
Naturally, and indeed, no further word must be spoken about all that which you have explained.
If you still have time, then I would still like to bring forward a question in regard to the Third World War.
You can ask. Then thereafter I want to converse with you privately.
Naturally. Now, when the talk is about the Third World Fire, then the humans of the Earth always mean that thereby the Third World War is meant, and indeed a Third World War that is like the First and Second World Wars. But as I know from you, you also then talk, as also do the ancient prophets, of a world fire or world war in a quite different form. The Third World Fire, or the Third World War, as I understand your exposition anyway, can very probably be the unbelievable chaos that exists on the Earth at the present time. I mean, thereby, the terrorism organized through religious and political extremism, as well as governmental and militaristic terrorism, for example by Osama bin Laden, Ariel Sharon, and Yasser Arafat, as well as George W. Bush and Tony Blair and their military and allies and so forth. I further take into account, additionally, the worldwide sexual degeneration among humans, the pornography that evermore takes the upper hand, the outgrowth of child sex abuse, the mistreatment of women and children, discrimination against women, sexual rape, the climbing criminality, and violent crime. But in the same wise I also add to that the entire commercial criminality, the destruction of companies and businesses, as well as the exploitation of companies and businesses through administrative advisors and managers. Further to name is the worldwide unemployment, the ceaselessly growing overpopulation and the apathy of the humans to one another, the ever faster disappearing of good interpersonal relationships, and the mistreatment of children. Also the defenselessness of children, the addiction of the humans to drugs and alcohol belong to that, I think, as also marriage, which is thoughtlessly and senselessly entered into, and, from the start, is doomed to divorce. There is also the greed for power, avarice, imperiousness, as well as the lying which has become habitual to the humans, their underhandedness, falseness and swindling, alongside jealousy, the addiction to retribution and hate. Dishonesty is likewise everywhere, as also mistrust, envy, jealousy, evil, intolerance, all badness, and an absence of virtue. Also to note are thereby, right around the world, the very many sites of war in the different countries, where thousands upon thousands of humans are miserably slaughtered and bestially murdered, alongside those who wretchedly starve, die of thirst or from plagues, the origins of which often lie in the fault of the humans themselves. All that, as well as many other evil things which are still to be named, which however would take too long to list. And when I take, together, all the goodness, love, and positive, in opposition to all the preponderating evil and all wretchedness of the earthlings, as it has already predominated for quite a while with practically the entire humanity, and gets worse every day, then I think that quite probably it can be a third world fire, respectively a third world war. The many wars of all kinds all around the world alone already reinforces that. But I do not thereby say that indeed a collective world-enveloping great war will not still develop from all that, and then can be described as an effective Third World War. What is your opinion about that?
You are perfectly correct, and you have listed a large part of the terrifying scenarios which already have existed for quite some time, which actually still spread out ever further and intensify, whereby the world fire finally can get completely out of control, which is unfortunately to fear. The path to avoidance has often been explained, yet the humans of Earth are like stubborn cattle, who, with seeing eyes and open senses, run to their own ruin. In this regard, an effective low intelligence of the humans must be spoken of. But now, dear friend, I would like to turn to the private matter,